I think about my life too, and I'm not doing the things that are good for me, it's short-sightedness, it's reactionary, I don't have time for that, it's a devaluation, a lack of vision. And so when I get into a better space, I have a better field of vision, I have a proper evaluation, I can see the things that are important to me more clearly, and then that inspires me to engage in those little incremental things that add up to the best version of myself that day down the road.
Hey everybody, Tim Timmons here with the next 10,000 minute podcast. Today we've got Tim Timmons. We've got Chris Cleveland.
Hey guys.
We've got Amoy Donice.
Hi.
We're all sitting on the same side of the table, and we're just talking now with your significant other.
I'm the same side of the table.
Are you?
Yeah, I am. I'm that guy.
Okay. I'm not judging you. I'm just maybe
I know
I am.
it's weird. It's like
did.
countercultural from even how I would judge people.
Yeah.
I'd probably judge the couple that sits on the same side, but we do.
And you're having a meal together, and you're looking at each other sideways like this.
Yeah.
Hey, babe.
I don't think it's always now, but we're
Yeah,
same
like
side.
cafeteria style.
Cafeteria style? Oh, like on little benches?
Yeah, like in
Do you prefer a side sit or a front face sit?
So many different sits, huh?
Yeah. Might depend on the.
Yeah, I think I prefer them to the side.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
Bam. That's preferred.
This is so interesting.
Well, if you want to know how we got this well adjusted, today's podcast is for you.
Yes, it's so true, everybody. So you're going to hear about our issues today. So we have Chris and I's therapist
Yeah.
is on today. So Chad Karger is on, and it's such a good conversation.
Oh, yeah.
We just did it, people. So it's like fresh. And he told Chris a lot of things about Chris's life that are wrong. And I feel better because it's all the stuff that I've seen. We've seen for years.
I've been practicing all these things.
I think you heard the word Chris. I heard
To
the word
hell
Tim.
with the devil,
Interesting.
everybody. It was more of a Tim Timmons going, here's why I suck. Help me. So, we basically got free therapy today.
We did.
And
I said about 4 words and just took it in.
And then when I was 4, but I think you might even get a free therapy
Yeah. It's so good.
session today because it's that good, everybody.
Mhm.
It's that good. So after you listen to it and you get that free session, if you'd like to donate, you can donate to 10,000 minutes.
So true. Actually, I will say
I'm
two
just
things.
giving the segues
Yeah,
today, by
you're
the
doing
way.
so great. You're doing so great. I will say this, that if you do want to support 10,000 Minutes, please do that. Thank you for those of you who have already been supporting 10,000 Minutes.
Yes.
Really thankful for you. Really. And then if you want to support what Chad's doing, you can go to Porter's Call. I don't even know if it's going to be in the show notes.
Yeah.
It's going to be in the show notes. It'll be in the description
It's
below.
huge.
It's
It
worth
really is.
supporting because what they
Yes.
do is they are therapists for recording artists in this town and their spouses and significant others. So I get therapy for free, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anywho, you guys, you're gonna love this. So good. Bye.
Hey everybody, this is Moy. Sadly, some of our video footage is missing today, but we promise that our conversation with Chad is an amazing one. We thank you for your understanding.
We've got Chad Karger,
Yeah, it's great to be
and
here.
I just clarified your last name,
And I
Karger,
appreciate you doing
because you're my therapist and Chris's therapist, and I don't call you by your last name. I
No,
call
you
you
don't.
Chad.
Yeah.
And I just
or
want to
some
say
other
that I
names.
told Tim how to say your name before you came in, so I would
thank
like
you.
the credit.
I wanted to say it right because I could totally say, "Hey,
Okay,
Krager."
so we're snitching, we're fighting. Okay,
But
so much.
you said thank you, and I
did,
asked
because-
clarification.
And that's what
I
made me want to
appreciate
take
that.
the credit. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank
So-
you, Chris.
Thanks, man.
Can you read Chris right now? Why is he such a douche? Is it
I'm not
possible?
ready.
This
I'm not
podcast is going to
ready.
be too long. I was thinking about you coming in today, Chad, and I thought, you have this doctor-patient confidentiality, but we don't.
That's right.
So
You can tell all.
So
You mean
me and
about
a
him?
lot of my friends have talked about you, clinic,
yes, behind your back.
because so many of us come see you.
Yeah.
I was actually with a friend this weekend, and he was like, we were talking about stuff, and he's like, do you see Chad? I was like, yeah, I do. He's
Yeah,
like,
duh.
oh man, and then we just
Took
it
my
opens
name
up
in
a whole
vain.
nother door.
Totally. He is the worst. And that's generally what comes out of her mouth.
Yeah.
So everybody, you don't know Chad Karger.
Mm-mm.
And that's how you say his last name, Chris.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
if you're
thank you.
just curious, if you know,
I wasn't sure.
because Chad works for
Porter's Call.
Porter's Call, and Porter's Call is a nonprofit that does what?
Porter's Call exists to provide care and counsel to touring artists and their loved ones, spouses, partners. Has been around for 21 years. And all the counseling that we do is free of charge. The industry basically underwrites.
Yeah, like
the work.
our labels actually pay.
They just donate. So like so from the very beginning, the origin story really quickly was Al Andrews, our founder, was in private practice here in Nashville or in Franklin, and a couple of record label executives came to him and said, "Can we basically buy your Wednesday and your Thursday, and then just clear that out on your schedule and point artists that need help towards you?" And he said, "Yeah, we can try that." And so basically they did that, and they opened it to all artists in town, not just their artists. So the very act of that generosity was at the very beginning. And then it just kind of took off from there. So his practice basically closed and then opened as Porter's Call. So now he's the founder. I'm one of the porters. And there's two other porters as well there.
Chris and I come calling a lot.
And they come to Porter's Call.
It's good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you see a bunch of people. You've seen a ton of artists.
Yeah, that's all I see. Or the spouse or partners of those artists. So sometimes, a lot of times I meet with men mostly. So a lot of times it's a husband of, say, their wife is the artist. Yeah, but yeah.
Who's the most jacked up you've talked to? I felt like this would be a good try.
Good try.
What does it rhyme with? You don't have to say it, but
Jimmins.
I mean, it could be.
a few
That
letters,
totally
I'll
could
figure
be.
it out.
So I told you this in the office, but my mom's a therapist as well.
Yeah.
And she's actually been on the podcast, and she's amazing.
No pressure.
But I'm always, we're always as kids going, "Oh, that's a great story." But what was her name again, Mom? Just always trying to get her. Timothy, I can't do. Just.
I get that too.
So
Too good.
from your family,
From my family, from friends. Yeah. So it's kind of a parlor game, once people hear about
so
what
you're
I
saying
do.
I'm a cliche. And that's totally okay.
It was very predictable what you just did.
Dang it.
That's the best part, because I feel like when most of us are from name rural town in America or some like other place, we all move here. We all feel real isolated and alone and unique in, for me, Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? And then we move here and it's like, oh, get in line. You get the same story as everybody else.
Yeah.
You know?
That's too good.
Yeah, cool joke. Wow, that's funny.
Yeah, wow.
That was really funny.
That's true. I think part of the thing that I wish that all my clients could see is the community, though. There's this larger community of people kind of struggling with similar issues because all I do is work with people in that industry. And I oftentimes want to kind of open the door behind me and say, "No, look, you're in a good way. You're not the only one in this space, but I have that view, and like I have a group of guys that I meet with. I do have one group that I do, and so they get that more. But I think I saw almost like 250 individual artists in 21.
Wow.
So it's like and I'm just one of the three. So I do have a view there that I'm always trying to figure out ways to communicate to the person in my office, like, "Hey, you're not alone," and which is, a big deal in this industry because it is very isolating.
Totally. I mean, you can for sure use my name.
Okay.
And saying he is the worst. Actually, I was with my friends this summer, and I have friends.
That's great.
I just have some friends, but they're friends that, it's the friends that have known me my whole life, those people. And it doesn't matter. But there was a friend who had a dad who was a dentist. And guys, my teeth when I was a kid were legit. I mean, it was like they were just straight out. Everything was like, "Hey guys, how you guys doing?" But I was confident enough to be like, "This is pretty cool," and I don't know, you could whistle or whatever. And I'll never forget him going, "Man, those are the worst teeth I've ever seen in my entire life." And I'm sure he told his clients, like, "You know what? Yours are pretty bad, but my son's best friend are the worst." So if you want to use me in that
honesty
way,
like that is just almost, you just can't find that very, that's,
and I feel better about myself today. That's why
Shake to
I
it,
laugh
shake
like
to.
this. I close my lips when I laugh today. Okay, so one of the questions for you, and I love asking this of people who are dealing with people all the time, and even a specific group of people, is what do you learn about people? I mean, so if you see 250 humans and they're kind of bearing their soul to you, like what are some of the themes and the things that you see on the regular that like, man, I just see this and I see this and I see this. So as for Chris and I, we travel the country at churches and we really get a different view into the church because you see, 200 churches, communities, and you go, gosh, you can see where some of the holes are and some of the places where they've gotten tripped up or we as a community have gotten tripped up. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, man. It's not just one thing. So when I think about, common themes like that, there's a lot of different ones that come to my mind, but probably one of the very first things that comes to my mind is that people, are really hard on themselves and not just necessarily like negative talk on themselves, but just disregard the care that they need to do the thing that they're doing to live the life that they're living. And so in that way that's definitely a theme. So no matter what specific thing we're going to deal with in time with a particular person, one of the things you're just turning up the volume on is like the idea that taking care of yourself, being aware of yourself we've got to start there. I just generally people come in like minimizing,
Yeah.
Can you give an example? I mean,
suppressing. So whether it's like they minimize like how much stress they're carrying. So their sense of their payload is like off. They're like the truck that occasionally you see driving down the road that they've put way too much in the back. Yeah. And they're like on a road trip. You're just like, this isn't going to end well. Yeah. You're not going to get very far, Someone needs to come and help you unload or get a bigger truck or something. So I always tell people when they come to my office, it's like those scales on the side of the road, like where the semis pull off and weigh, occasionally. It's like this, we're going to get a proper reading of actually the payload. Yeah. Because especially with artists, that's a huge issue is that they're carrying a huge payload that they maybe are underestimating. Kind of a subtext in there is like, you don't have a real job anyways, so you don't work that hard. So what are you whining about? So then they just boom, 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 compress. Right. But so that's a big.
Are there ways that people? So most people who are listening to this are not artists. Are there ways that we can do this with friends? I mean, therapy is so helpful. I mean, it's just straight up so helpful. But are there things that you encourage people to do on their own or with other friends that are kind of the diagnostic tools, if you will?
Yeah, I mean,
just even in that vein.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, I think this is definitely a universal thing. I don't think this is what I'm saying about people underestimating, not take care of themselves is not particularly to just artists. I think this is something that we all kind of will tend to do at different seasons in our life. So diagnostic kind of work is, I think what you're asking me is like, are there practical things that people can do in their everyday life outside of the therapist's office that help them key back into?
Yeah. I mean, so if that's a normal area where you just see our whole community, which is a broad group of people, all struggling with, are there things that you would want to say to them and help them to rethink their thinking on? Yeah.
I think, my first thought is like, if I can get them to begin to listen to kind of what they're telling themselves, the narrative, the voices, So different ways of doing that would be like journaling and meditation. Those are usually the first two prescriptions, that I offer a person is like, and not that I don't want them sitting down to write, nonfiction, tell all, like journal. I need for you just to key into like what's going on inside of you. And by writing it and kind of getting it outside of your head, you're like, oh, well, I'll say that a lot to myself. I think that a lot to myself. I kind of meditate on that idea that's pretty corrupt a lot, and I need to rethink that. So that cognition, like taking control of these thoughts that are just kind of rolling around and roaming around inside of their head is, you know, journaling and in meditation can be extremely helpful in that way as well. It can be really difficult because there's so much to do and so little time to do it. So sitting down to meditate seems like a luxury they can't afford. But with practice, that mindfulness really comes, you know, that's kind of the goal is mindfulness. That would be the goal. That's the muscle you're trying to exercise, as it were, to counterbalance this idea that we don't take care of ourselves. We're not aware of the payload. Yeah.
Okay. So I know that, like, I know that to be true, that is actually personally, I know that journaling is so helpful for me. Like, that's such a gift for my soul. But I don't. Why don't we? When we know,
man,
gosh, this is so helpful for me, for us. I mean, how many things are like, I mean, this is just one example of a million things, but what is it in us and what are the questions that I need to be asking? By the way, this is basically us just getting free therapy. Just FYI.
Put it on my desk.
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question. There's, you know, it's interesting right now, like if you go to Amazon or to a bookstore and you just look at some of the popular nonfiction self-help books, it's things like How to Be Happy, How Do You Change, you know, it's like, and I think it's really getting at this idea of stuckness. A lot of these books talk about that. One of the books that I reference a lot is a book called Atomic Habits. And he talks about kind of the incremental approach to change. So I guess the failure, the breakdown, when you know this is a good exercise, but you don't do it, kind of gleaning some, you know, knowledge from these different sources that I'm sort of referencing here is the idea that it's a failure of, I guess, vision. Like you wake up, you realize like, I really probably should carve out some time to sit down and do that before I really engage the day. But something in your mind says, no, the most important thing is to rush out the door and get on with it. So to me, that's a failure of vision. That's a failure of like an appropriate coordinate. Like you don't see actually the true task at hand. And so helping a person slow down on the regular, and this is where therapy really does come into play. You can tell someone at a dinner party you should journal more and maybe meditate. Whereas the therapy really slows that person down on a regular basis and helps them see how they're not doing that, why they're not doing that, and then how to engage that.
It's an hour of intentional
You're
time.
basically just putting on the parking brake. And so to me, I guess that's, when I think about my life too, and I'm not doing the things that are good for me, it's short-sightedness, it's reactionary, I don't have time for that, it's a devaluation, a lack of vision. And so when I get into a better space, I have a better field of vision, I have a proper evaluation, you know, I can see the things that are important to me more clearly. And then that inspires me to engage in those little incremental things that add up to the best version of myself that day down the road.
So what enables that thinking? Like seeing all the people you meet with, is it something learned? Is it because it's just more common in our world? What exactly enables, or like the back end encourages you to get out the door and not value slowing down? Yeah.
This is the other thing that I was thinking about when you asked me, like, what's a common theme, is that the other kind of related to that is an unknowing or a lack of knowledge or awareness about what drives us, and more specifically, like history, and more specifically, family of origin. So that's where, when you start really seeing deep-seated habits, that you're in that territory. And again, that's the kind of thing that probably on your own, you're going to have a harder time unearthing than having someone who digging, just saying, well, hey, slow down, stop there, go back to what happened there. What did they say to you? Who was there? What, you know? So there's a lack of knowledge there simply about how we got to where we're at. That's fueling us forward. It's inspiring us, as it were, maybe not always healthfully in bad ways. So that's kind of the Pandora box, that question that you're asking. When we get to that, like, why do I keep doing this? Well, that's a good question. And so really quickly, I mean, in my sessions, I'm in stories, people's histories relatively fast. Like I want to get back to 0 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. I want to see all those age segments and hear people, places, things, circumstances, because that's all going to be grist for the mill for me to understand what is causing them to get stuck in the moment. Yeah.
So you did just say grist for the mill.
That's therapy talk. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was a special word.
Just like that's gonna be what like
grease.
Yeah,
or is grist an actual word?
We can do grease for the wheel as well. Grist for the mill
is.
Yeah.
Don't correct the therapist.
No, I'm trying to understand.
This is we'll have to look that up, but that is actually.
Is it grist?
GRIST for the mill, like your.
Yeah, you guys didn't know that?
Please.
That makes me want to look it up.
Okay, this makes me feel like grist would be like effort to get the wheel going, and grease would be like the thing that makes it easier for it to spin. Or
a grist mill grinds cereal grain into flour in middlings.
Gosh, and you know what? The good part is I know what middlings are. You guys probably don't.
That's fine. All of our listeners in Iowa really got this down.
They're like idiots.
Like, that's what we're going to make the cereal. That's what we're going to make the thing.
So if you don't get anything else from this podcast today.
Grist mill. So sorry. Oh gosh.
Cheers.
That's what I do. I had a great question on the other side of it, but I was like, I can't let grist go because I didn't know what that meant.
I'll use grease next time.
No, please do not. It might be the exact opposite of what you're saying because grist feels.
I feel like grease for the wheel, grist for the mill, grease for the wheel.
That's what I always say.
Let's go.
Every morning.
Okay, back to the will.
History and story. Like that to me is.
Okay, so here's my question.
Right.
Is there a way that just civilians, we're going to call ourselves civilians on this side of the table.
Okay.
That we can, is it like in journaling, do you do that? Then are there certain things, if I was journaling and I didn't have a you, let's say, or friends, or I did have friends, you guys are my friends, right? That we could journal or somehow get to those places and be curious about certain words that we're using, or are we just too close to our own story to be able to stop and see some of the patterns?
I think sometimes we are. I do think that. And so we do need people who are prompting us, prodding us, antagonizing us maybe to dig deeper. I think there are, just simply like checking out the box I journaled, obviously that maybe is not getting it done. There's a book called The Artist's Way that I find a lot of artists have read, and it's been around for a long time. And I think one of the very first exercises that she promotes in the book is called morning pages, which is basically just kind of like word vomit. Like you're not actually writing coherent sentences. You're just unloading the stuff that's stockpiled in your mind since the day before. And you're just putting it down on the page, ever how long that takes, in terms of pages. And you're starting there, just like offloading. And so a lot of times artists will talk about that exercise by just, writing whatever's there. They start seeing maybe that day or over time themes that are emerging. And that ends up coming into my office sometimes.
Are there certain things you're looking for, or are there words you're looking for? Are there like things that when you're asking these like 0 to 10 questions, age, are there certain questions that you're asking?
Oh yeah. So I'm looking for like this actually, I'm always trying to give credit where credit's due because I don't really have an original thought inside of my head. It's all, I'm just standing on the shoulders of everybody that I've learned from. So my boss actually, Al was one of my professors, and he has some really interesting work that he's done around story. and helping people understand their story. So like I look for places of like where people talk about the word he uses is innocence, where they think back in their story where it was just like that moment as a child where you're just like, this is, playing down by the pond and my friends and skipping rocks and just, you're just like, this is the whole entire world and it's beautiful, it's safe, and I love it. So I listen for those kinds of,
where was innocence?
Yeah. And then of course, obviously the world is troubled and difficult and broken. So in due time, that child will experience some sort of tragedy, a loss of that innocence. That's a significant marker somewhere in that time frame. And then not long after that person, we go through tragedy. We have to figure out a way to live in light of like the systemic brokenness.
Wow.
So he calls that contending, the way we contend with the world, with ourselves, with others. So we create a plan, coping mechanisms, like that's a significant part of the story. And then obviously
that's part of contending.
Yeah. And then what you're helping a person move to is maybe emerge from the contending sort of broken coping strategies to a more full, like redemptive, reconciled place with themselves and others in the world, even though the world continues to falter and other people will fail them and they will disappoint themselves. There is a better way maybe than just the reflective way that you contended as a result of the tragedy.
Yeah.
So like those little chapter or those markers or those prompts can help people as we're working through those different timeline segments, really think through like, kind of help organize thought.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's been helpful to me. I can definitely use those words and go back in my story. And the thing is innocence isn't just something that you experienced when you were 10 playing down by the pond with your friends. Yeah. Innocence is something, that moment that, my first child came into the world. That's a moment of pure innocence where you're just like, this is the whole entire world. This is the center of the universe. Yeah. And, of course, not long after that, there's going to be trouble. And so those are important markers. And I think paying homage to those, reading those, listening to everybody has that.
Right.
Everybody has those things in their story.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. I just love hearing people's stories. And I love getting them to appreciate their story as this unique, like no one else is telling this story. This is my unique story. And there's something I can learn about myself. Again, why am I in this space presently the way I am from what's happened to me up to this point?
Yeah. What themes do you see about people on how they see God?
That's a great question. And I did note like that would be one of the things, spirituality and faith, especially we are in Nashville and there's a huge segment of the population that's kind of the culture, like Christianity, the church. And then there's specifically like worship, Christian music.
Right.
That's all in play. So this is a pretty frequently, if not a direct, topic, it's definitely in the room.
Yeah.
Oftentimes. And I feel like we're in such a moment with this topic, especially inside of the community of faith and inside of the church. I guess just a lot of the deconstruction and rethinking and turning over, and that's makes it feel like everything's kind of still up in the air right now. It's hard to answer that question exactly because it just feels like such a live topic, a live wire. But I go back sometimes in my mind when I'm talking to people and, some of my very early education in psychology and in counseling, both my undergrad and master's degree. I remember reading some of the classic literature, from essentially atheistic philosophers and psychologists about how people project upon God, their own experiences around their parents and their fathers. I mean, that's classic Sigmund Freud.
Right.
Carl Jung talked about archetypes, I mean, so I definitely find some of that same thing at work. Yeah. So you definitely, again, history has a lot to do. It's very persuasive in how we come to know and talk about transcendence, eternal being, God. I mean, has a huge influence over that. And because we are in the South, more or less, and that, there's a lot of baggage around that,
Yeah.
So there's some serious distortion. I'm, on the one hand, very grateful that people are really taking stock and stopping and thinking about how did I arrive at these beliefs and what am I talking about when I say God?
Right.
I'm thankful for that. And as a person of faith, that's a really unique space that I sit in as a helper to people, because not everybody, has that. So I can't always talk explicitly about that with everybody, because they don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I always
they're pissed at that concept,
or they're pissed at it,
hurt
and I'm
by
like,
it.
yeah,
That's probably a better way to say that.
Yeah. So I'm like, I just kind of sometimes read the room and figure out, is this person, how much do they want to talk about this? But my understanding of those topics and things related to the idea of God and the person of who God is and theology and philosophy is we're oftentimes in the room, in my opinion, and closer to that topic than maybe most people realize sometimes.
Say it another way.
They're talking about their purpose. They're talking about what they value. They're talking about meaning. And that's all kind of in close orbit around what I understand when I talk about ultimate questions related to who God is and why are we here and all that. So they're not maybe connecting that topic up with what they're saying, but in my mind, we're in that solar system, you know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll have people ask me, like, they'll kind of sort of pull back the curtain and say, how do you answer this question of meaning or purpose? And I'm like, well, that's interesting. They just put me on the spot. And so then I just say, well, this is how I do it personally. And I can, share that. Yeah. Or it's like somebody asked me in a counseling session, what would you do in this situation? And I will say to them, that's not typically a question that people ask me.
Right.
And they're like, they're kind of like, oh, really? But aren't you? That's what you do. And I'm like, actually, it's not actually what I do.
Right.
I mean, I have all kinds of thoughts and feelings about all kinds of things that people are talking to me about. That's not the time and place to bring all those out.
Right.
That's not why they're there. But occasionally someone will just put me on the spot and ask me straight up, And
then you use your feeling words. I feel like you're an idiot. I feel like you're ugly.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to end this session.
Yeah.
That's our time.
I feel tired of your baloney. Yeah.
I had a question about, is there a common why people are deconstructing? At least the people that you're working with. Is there a common why or
related to faith or
or similar situations or experiences in life that have them wanting to deconstruct in therapy?
I would say it's probably related to that part of their story where there's tragedy or hurt, like we were saying earlier. That usually they're trying to hold the idea of how they've come to understand God and say Christian faith with the pain, suffering that they've personally experienced. And then, of course, I think unique in this moment in time in human history, like just the world kind of just seems inflamed,
Right.
So they're holding that with this idea of, God, and there's a lot of dissonance there of like, these don't really make sense.
Right.
I've got to do some work here.
Right.
And so what they'll do is like, I am seeing and experiencing what I'm experiencing. The world sucks. So they'll leave that there and they'll go over here and go to work on the deconstructing of the ideas, at least related to how they understand God. And they just keep working sort of, keeping their eye on their situation until they have something that they feel like lines up with that. And so that's a lot of times where I feel people kind of how they kind of come in with that idea, and they're in varying degrees of that. So they've done away with, some maybe tenets of their Christian faith, like questions about what happens after we die, or how people come to be made right or whole. They've rethought all that. So they're in varying degrees of rethinking and reconstructing that or tearing that all down. And again, I'm just kind of there reading the room.
Yeah.
Trying to just, the idea of the porter, back to the name of the organization, is the porter was like the layman who lived in the Benedictine monastery. And so he wasn't one of the monks. So the porter was really there to extend hospitality to people who would stop in the monastery on their way somewhere. So offering them a meal, a place to stop and rest and reflect, directions on where they're going. And that's kind of the idea behind the name Porter's Call, is that I'm kind of there to say, like, where is this person at and what can I do for them where they're at? I don't need to try to get them where I think they should be, but just try to come alongside of them and help them right where they're at. No matter what I think or feel about where they're at,
Yeah.
And that's sometimes really hard because I have strong feelings and thoughts about particular things. And sometimes I'm sitting with someone that I'm just like, oh man, if you would just do it my way, you know?
Yeah.
And I have to really check that, like,
because if you
moment.
said that, what would happen? And is that if they lived your way, would that be the best thing for them, or do they need to go through the whole thing?
I think that's part of it. It's a lot like, when we're raising our children, it's like, man, I wish I could just help you not go through what you're about to go through, but I think you probably have to. And I'm just going to be here. I'm not going to be very far, and you can always get a hold of me and always come home. And I think in some ways that's what Porter's Call is. That's what every counselor is like, I wish I could get the map out and show you a different way through this, but you look like you're probably about to go right through the storm. And so I'm going to be here, and other people in their life might be pulling their hair out, going like, saying things like, isn't your counselor talking about this? Like,
right.
They're almost thinking like, what are they doing in those sessions?
Right.
Like this doesn't seem to be helping them, because all I see is them making more and more mistakes. Whereas me as the therapist is thinking, this is a very slow process. You can't just pull someone in by the collar and say, stop doing that.
Change your behavior.
Yeah, it just doesn't work that way. We don't, that's not how it works, And so I'm in that process of very slow, incremental recognition, knowledge, understanding. And sometimes we're dealing with illnesses as well.
Right.
Real, true mental illness. So simply saying to someone, stop doing that is like, that is pretty futile.
Right.
You're dealing with an illness, something that's wrong with their body and mind. So
that is so wild. Just not to make too much of a tangent, but we're talking a lot about the Bible right now in our community and the accommodating nature of God. So how God, through even in the Bible, like, Genesis 1 and 2 is talking about the man and the woman, man and wife, and this coming together. Like, that was the ideal, Genesis 1 and 2. But then you get to chapter 3 and everything, goes crazy. But chapter 7 or page 7, you've got God all of a sudden accommodating for polygamy. He's like, okay, so if you're going to do this, make sure that you treat your original wife really well. Do not forsake her. I mean, and it's like this wild thing of like, oh, what if, God has actually been accommodating the whole time. Just like a good parent would.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't change your behavior. I love you. I love you so much. I want Genesis 1 and 2 for you.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah.
But I can't make you do that.
No.
And for God, it's actually beautiful. If that's truly who God is, that he's the one who's been accommodating all this time, kind of just as this beautiful father or this great counselor, that is really accommodating for the hearts of his people.
I think occasionally, I think that's well said. I love that idea, and that really resonates with me. And then we do have the stories where, God wrestles Jacob. Psalm 23 says, He makes me lie down in green pasture. There are these moments where we get into those moments where we're no longer being accommodated, but He is literally imposing Himself upon us. And and it's kind of that moment where it's the moment. It's the change moment, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely experienced that in the counseling office. It's like, here we are. This is it. And
so good, Chad.
it's like we're gonna go down right here. We're gonna make this the point, and this is an inflection point. This is a really crucial moment in your story that you have to reckon with. And so you really have to hold that, and that's where they experience me a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Or they walk out angry with me, frustrated, maybe confused. So it's a little bit slightly different, but I think it does reflect the character of God. I hope that's the case, because I do believe that God is.
Couldn't that be grace and truth? I mean, the best description.
Absolutely. When someone talks to me about biblical counseling, and that whole field and understanding of how to do therapy, that's what I think about, is like, I know kind of what they're referencing in terms of like the idea of who the person is and how a person becomes whole. But generally speaking, to me, biblical counseling is that work of like holding grace and truth in tension. I mean, I just have so many different people that come to my office with so many different backgrounds and histories and habits and ways of doing life that if I have this thinly prescribed kind of view of reality where I can work, I'm just going to be useless.
Gosh,
to most people.
Yeah. Or only to a certain few will you work.
I mean, I've got so many different walks of life sitting there. It's a very small community when you think about the general population, recording artists.
Right.
And their loved one.
Right.
That's pretty small. But when you then dive into that community and really look at it, it's very diverse. And there's so many different lifestyles in that community.
Yeah.
And so, my personal opinion about those is relevant sometimes, but not always.
Yeah. Totally.
So
gosh, and what an interesting way to walk through life. I mean, we want to be with people that are like us, that think like us, that work with our way, which is fine. But yeah, that's a good encouragement, even just for everybody
I
in
think that
normal
is.
life.
I think that I've thought that too in this season where everything seems so polarized. I have thought about the work that I do and the habit that is required in that space to be a little bit more patient with something that's other, different variation. That's actually that's something that like I need to apply that to other areas of my life,
Yeah.
And so I do find that it is helpful, and it kind of eases a unnecessary amount of stress. Like when you're trying to control the world around you and get it to be a certain way,
right,
which you really don't have any control over.
Preach.
It just makes life for you as the person trying to control just really miserable.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we have so little control over so many things.
Yeah, you said that almost every session. I'm like, you know what? Shut your face. That's fine.
I know.
Yeah. Delete from memory.
You know what's
You
funny
are
is
the one
like
who's
I
angry.
bring those things up a lot because they're like the things I'm thinking about in my own life. My kids are all like scattered abroad, and and there's big issues in my own life. So I'm like, man, I just don't have very much control over very many important things in my life. So if I don't have any control, what's the other way I can relate to these things? And the word I use is respond or be responsible. If I can't control it, I can respond to them or it. And that feels important to me. That there's something there that really resonates with me as opposed to me, the vision of me, the idea of me trying to control, outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why that gets talked about a lot in there.
In our last session, which I can share about. I had a lot to share and help Chad with. He was crying. It was weird.
You're helping him not interject his own.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
Chad, no.
Chad was, oh my gosh, I have not stopped thinking about it, but it's in the same vein when you're basically telling me to slow down. Like slowing my, with my kids when things don't go the way that I think they should go, or, because I've got high expectations in life of myself and others in certain places, in my closest relationships. That's true. And you were saying, gosh, every time we speed up, it's just problems. Like when we're getting angry, that's always speeding.
Yeah. The anxiety is
speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted you to talk about that a little bit because it was so helpful to just go, hey, and then I was telling you, he's like, can you take 10 seconds and just step back and just breathe for a second, pray, do whatever you need to do. Just hang out for a second and almost be able to step back and assess what's actually going on, the real things that are going on. And I'm like, gosh, I can do that, but it doesn't work because I'm just pissed. I'm sitting there for 10 seconds going, you know what? That was stupid. He was dumb. That was what he did was stupid, but I'm quiet about it. And he's like, but that's not really going to do much for you unless you replace that with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Slowing down. I mean, I just think that's a really helpful, trait or habit to get into, especially when our body and our mind starts telling us like danger, that all those warning lights start going off.
Yeah.
And like everything just starts revving up. And so to avoid the danger, we start really moving through time and space, people really quickly.
Yeah.
To try to cut it off at the pass. And usually that's where we do the most harm to others and to ourselves. That's where we usually come back and say, look, I'm sorry. I just kind of lost myself in that space. And that's good to be able to do that. I mean, you need relationships where you can come back and say, I messed that up, but like maybe you could do it differently the next time.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily have to ask for the apology, but you could just say like, okay, I need to stop here and just take a second, and get my bearings.
The helpful thing was you pushing me past just stopping and getting my bearings, but it was stopping, getting my bearings, but also replacing it with compassion.
Yeah.
Replacing it for myself or the other person, or empathy for myself or the other person. And gosh, even in anxiety, that like deep worry, that's just the speed. I mean, an anxiety attack seems to be
the speeding up,
like the speeding up of all these things.
Your body's literally speeding up. You're breathing really shallow, so you're breathing faster.
Right.
Your heart's racing. You're sweating. So you're literally, if your body had like an RPM indicator, you'd be revving in the red line. So it is definitely the idea of speed is happening in those spaces because we perceive danger probably where there isn't. Like it's just that's anxiety is actually not the problem. It's just it's calibrated wrongly, and so getting that right entails us listening better, hearing, being more patient. Hang on a second. Don't freak yet.
It's like this, the not the echo chamber, but that just cycle when all of a sudden your thoughts go into a place and then it just starts spinning, but it's in this little box and it like keeps spinning faster and faster and there's no reality to it.
Yeah.
Which
there's
what
no
my mom
perspective.
says about reality.
I remember
mental illness.
It's just not accepting reality or not living in reality because you think you can still have something you can no
basically
longer
not
have.
living in reality or accepting your reality. I can't remember what
it was great. Carol, you did a great job.
I remember.
We remember it. I have a million other questions.
Right.
And this is going to go. So, Chad, you get to be on here again. So,
good.
Sucks to be you. Do you guys have any questions before I
had one before you.
Oh, dude.
I feel like when we have guests like Chad, like who are I just sit back and listen the whole time. I feel like I don't talk at all, but it's because I'm just like trying to get my money's worth or something. Did you find it?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
I was gonna say, this might not connect, but is it also the lack of slowing down and all those things? Is it also because we don't know how to self-comfort?
Yeah.
And so therefore we cope and run to other things, and it might be winning an argument or binging or escaping, but we don't actually know how to self-soothe.
Yeah, that's that whole like idea of self-care. So it's like that's a great way of saying that. Like, to me, slowing down definitely is a way of kind of sort of turning into yourself and saying, what's going on with me right now? Like, what is really bothering me here? And that requires us to really listen, be more aware, mindful,
honest.
Yeah, honest with ourselves. And it actually can be helpful then coming back. Like, I've done this with my wife. I would come back to her and say, when you see me like that look on my face or that energy, from what I can tell, this is what's happening for me. Like, this is what I'm going for. This is what I'm trying to protect. And when we had that conversation, she's often like, wow, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, just being able to call it out like that. It's like, okay, well, that's not actually going to get me that.
Yeah.
So I need to back up and find a different approach toward this end, which oftentimes is a good end. I'm usually going for something good.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm just going about it in all the wrong ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh, Chad, one time you made this illustration. It was so good about what was it? Oh, Timmons, you're killing it. I just did it. A person who stutters. You said, I just heard this story about a person who stutters and they're looking for the word.
Yeah. So let's see if I can get it right.
Yeah, because I'll correct you.
So I read an article about, it was when Joe Biden was running for president, because he has a stutter. And so this guy wrote an article in The Atlantic about this. And he basically talks about how when people have a stutter, there's certain words they know are coming in the conversation or they're going to have to use that are blocks for them. And so that they stutter on those words or those syllables or those sounds or letters. And so as they see them coming in their mind's eye, they have to work around that word. And so they're constantly doing that. So someone who's managing their stutter a lot of times will slow down in their speech so as to be able to work around those different blocks in the conversation. And a lot of times people hearing them, I've had clients who stutter. And so when you're listening to someone stutter, sometimes you're if you don't stutter, you're listening to them, you want to jump in and help them say the word. And that's not actually what's going on. They haven't forgotten the word.
Right.
They're literally doing this mental gymnastics to get around certain sounds.
Wow.
And I just think it's a really powerful, like, I know that a person who stutters wishes probably they didn't stutter. So I don't want to, I know that they would change if they could, or as they work on that in therapy. But the idea of what they're doing there, like speaking in such a thoughtful way to even anticipating sounds and words and letters to then move around it to get to the place where they want to go in the conversation. That to me is profound.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, wow, there's people out there doing that. And in some ways, that's kind of what we need to learn to do is be better in anticipation of, like, this is the kind of situation that trips me up. And I need to right now start thinking about, like, my daughter's about to come home. I know what she's going to want to talk about. This is a trigger point for me. And I got to start thinking about that right now as a way to work around and get to a better place, you know, and not just plow through and blow the whole thing up.
Right.
Yeah. And in our conversation, you used it in a different way, which, because I just learned something through that. But you used it in a way, in a sense of, there's certain things that we probably should work. Oh my gosh, I'm like stuttering as I'm doing this, which is totally fine. That we should figure out how to work through, but we stop, and it stops us. So we're like, ooh, I'll find another way around that. Yeah. Ooh, that's a landmine. I don't want to go there. So we find another way around that. Yeah. And
so the person that's working on their stutter, they will stop sometimes and they can't work around it. So they have to actually go slow and work through it.
Right.
And with time, they begin to feel more comfortable with those sounds, syllables, letters.
Yeah. And how many of those places in my marriage or in relationships or in my own life do I go, oh, don't want to go there again. Don't want to feel that. I'm going to go around this. Don't want to feel that. I want to go around this. Yeah. That story is profound in many ways.
No, yeah. It works both ways. I just found that I was meeting with someone. It was interesting because I had a couple of clients who struggled with that. And then it was during the presidential election and people were talking about Joe Biden like he didn't know what he's talking about. Like he was old because he was speaking slowly. But it was not that. And he just doesn't talk about his stutter very much. And this guy who wrote this article was kind of making that point.
Wow.
It's like he's speaking slow because he's doing all those little mental gymnastics to get through the conversation. It's like, wow, it's like someone who walks slow.
So good.
Yeah.
It's like they're not, it's okay if you walk slow. I just need to slow down. I tend to walk fast, you know, or whatever.
Well, I think they should walk faster.
So does my wife.
My daughter, when we took her on her little 13th birthday trip to Boston, and we're like, Hillary and I are just hauling, like we're going on our walks in the mornings, you know, like full on mega speed. And she's like, you guys, can we not walk fast? I'm like,
down.
no, you will walk with us because we gotta case this town.
Oh my goodness.
Places to see.
Yeah. So just good parenting stuff that Chad told me to do.
Yeah.
He said, force them.
Don't listen.
Yeah.
Don't listen to what they
Don't
need.
compromise.
No. Yeah.
You know.
If anything, do not compromise.
Right.
You're right.
All truth,
Always.
Tim. All truth. Expect.
Chad, have you ever met Tom Tommins?
No, he hasn't met Tom Tommins yet.
My
No.
goodness.
Tom Tommins is Tim Timmons' alter ego.
Oh, no.
He really shows up when we Zoom.
Okay.
When
when
I
you
go
go
to my
for a Zoom.
stress.
When the cameras have
When-
to be set up and
When
things
Tim
like
goes
that.
into his stress mode and things are overwhelming, Tim becomes
Tim
Tom
disappears.
Tommins.
Tom shows
Yes.
up.
Yes.
In the Enneagram, if that's your world, I kind of just go straight to the negative part of the one. This is
Yeah.
how I see the world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, and I'm not lame to people. It's just, if you know me, you're like,
Tim's gone.
whoa,
Yeah.
where's
Yeah.
that guy? Where's the guy that we like?
That's so
Yep,
funny.
yep,
Douche
yep.
spots
Your
here
alter
now.
ego.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's so funny.
We're going to talk through that one next
Yeah.
session.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what about you guys? Why are you guys dumb?
Chad already knows.
Okay, Chad.
Yeah.
It's now time for 10,000 thoughts.
Okay.
So,
It's funny. I told my wife I'm doing a podcast today called 1,000 Minutes, but it's 10,000.
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah. You
Oh,
were
I missed it
9 off.
by
Perfect.
9,000.
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
It's fine.
I wasn't prepared for 10,000.
Yeah. It's
I'm
going to be a
prepared
long
for
day.
1,000.
It's going to
Yeah.
be a long day, but you're going to do great. Okay. So these are speed round
Oh, okay.
things where we're going to judge you now.
Okay.
You've been judging us, and now it's our turn just to go, wow. He really avoided that. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like,
Okay.
Yeah.
slow down. But
Bring it
about
this isn't
mental
slow down
gymnastics.
time. This
Here we
is
go.
speed up.
Yeah. It's quick.
Yeah, this is quick.
Okay.
Okay. First thing you do in the morning.
Put my UFA sandals on.
Oh, I don't even know what those
UFA
are. But
sandals.
Yeah.
They're these foam sandals. They're right by my bed.
You
let's
just
go.
put them on.
Yeah. Put my feet in them.
I love it.
Can you tell us more?
Well, they're super soft and comfortable. My wife gave them to me for my birthday because my son owned a pair.
Yeah.
And my son said, "Dad, this will change your life if you wear these." And so I started I started wearing them. Like, this is amazing. Yeah, it is a little bit like the Willy Wonka guy. It's spelled OOFOS, I think.
Okay.
Mm,
I'm into it.
that's awesome.
I'm looking
That's
them up
literally
right now.
I'd spin in my bed and put those on like an old man in his slippers.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
I'm in.
Yeah. I wonder grist the mill with those things. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Okay. Bad habit.
I love potato chips.
Oof.
Mhm.
So it's not uncommon for me to grab a handful sometime around 5:30 or 6.
A handful though.
That's not bad. It's not a bag full.
I mean,
if
no,
you-
it's not a bag full, but like,
But what's a bag? I mean, there's
Yeah,
family size.
exactly.
There's
Family
little.
share.
but we have these little plastic bowls in our house that we've had since the kids were tiny.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we still have them, but we do. And they're my designated like chip holder.
holder.
And my kids come home and they're like, they look at me pouring my chips still,
Yeah.
like after 20 years,
Yeah,
still
yeah, yeah.
pouring like a little thing of chips, and they just kind of roll their eyes like, "Dad, something's never changed. There you are with your chips in the plastic bowl."
Is there a brand that is your kind of go-to? Like, this is my jam.
No,
You
anything
just need
in
a
the-
crunch.
yeah, salt, starch.
Salt, vinegar. I mean,
Oh yeah, and I was just in
Any
Canada
flavor?
with my wife. She's from Canada. We were up there visiting her family, and they have like a whole nother chip game up there.
Oh, wow.
Potato chip. They have like all
Anchovy.
dressed.
Ooh.
They have, I don't like ketchup, but the ketchup potato chip is
I'm not
life
sure I'm in
changing.
on that.
Nope. I just
I don't
barfed in my
like
mouth
ketchup.
a
I don't
little
like
bit. Yeah.
ketchup.
I'm
I'm
not
sure-
You're
Strong-
safe
I have strong
here.
feelings
We don't like
against that.
ketchup.
Yeah.
I don't like ketchup.
Yeah.
My
I don't either.
Canadian friend said, "No, Chad, I don't either, but eat this chip."
Yeah.
And I did. I'm like, this
I want
is
to talk to you about
interesting.
peer pressure. Chad.
So there you go. That's bad habit.
Wow. Most recent book you've read?
Let's see. Probably A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Tolls.
Oh.
I'm rereading it
Okay.
because it's so good. It's a novel.
I've read it like 6 times.
Yeah.
No big deal.
It's about a man
I'll
who
give you the
lives in
Cliff
a.
Notes.
It's about a man who lives in a hotel
In a motel. Yeah.
in Moscow,
Moscow. Yeah.
during the Bolshevik Revolution.
Watch your mouth. Continue.
Sorry.
Yeah. We don't cuss on this.
It's really fascinating.
It's pretty interesting.
Does he
So-
die?
Sorry,
Chris.
Does he?
Chris.
Yeah, does
I
he?
don't want to give the end
All
away.
right, no spoilers. No
Classic.
spoilers. It's such a good book.
So-
Okay. Mountains or beach?
Oh, mountains.
Yeah. I knew that one.
You got this tan going on. It looks like a beach tan
No,
right
I've
now.
been in the mountains. I
Okay.
was in the mountains of Utah for a week, and then the Canadian Rockies for a
Let's
week.
go.
Wow.
Okay.
So I'm like,
He's he's a button down.
Yeah.
He's got a little tan now.
Yeah.
You see the biceps popping out of it. It's like Chad's been hitting it.
Hey, let him
I
be.
got the glow of,
Totally.
Yeah.
Mountain
of
glow.
playing for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All
right.
Yeah.
Did you bring your dog?
No, we couldn't on
Okay.
this trip. Yeah.
It's a total mountain dog, everybody.
Yeah, she is.
Pet peeve.
Oh man. Pet peeve. Oh man, see this is
Ponytails
no,
in your therapy office.
no.
Grease versus Gris. Sorry, keep going. I'm just.
This is probably a blind spot for me. Like my wife would, if she were sitting there, I guarantee you,
She'd have them.
she would be like, "Oh, Chad, this is your pet peeve." But I'm having a hard time answering this because I'm in my mind convinced myself that I don't have a pet peeve.
Okay.
See how broken that is?
Maybe not.
So maybe people having pet peeves is your
Mm.
pet peeve.
Dramatic people.
No. Oh, I heard a guy on this is like on the plane the other day, and it just for like an hour from
Yeah.
Chicago to Nashville. It was just like, oh my God, it's gonna drive me crazy. This guy
There
doing
you go.
this.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Go.
And
Go.
he
It's
was
safe place.
he was
Safe place.
sucking his teeth
What?
Oh no.
like
No.
that. So like he's sitting
Yeah.
right there, and my grandfather used to do that. And
Like
I
he
was
had some chicken in his teeth. He had something left over.
yeah, but he's just like,
my.
and he's
Can't get it
watching
out.
something, so he's got his earbuds on, so
we
he can't hear it.
it.
No.
And I'm sitting there in the aisle. I'm like, that's
so
my
in
papa. That's
Oh.
what's going on? And I told my wife, I was like, somebody is sucking their teeth.
Yeah.
So I'm like, now I'm just doing the slow scan. I'm
Oh
trying
my
to catch
gosh.
it.
Where
Oh
is
wait,
it?
totally.
And I'm like, oh.
So to snap at him.
And
Hey,
I really wanted to
Look
tell him,
alive.
like,
Yeah.
hey, you got your, and this is really loud.
Yeah.
We all hear this. You
Hey.
don't.
Chad Karger, PhD.
Yeah.
I just
Pre-session.
I just want to let you know that this is probably regression of some sort.
Yeah.
And if you ever
Yeah.
want to talk about it,
It's like-
give me a call.
Yeah.
And
Was this like a,
shut the heck up.
Yeah.
yeah,
To
like
just
some sort of
choose yourself
breastfeeding
like that.
thing?
Okay, do you do the thing? I do this, you guys. I hate myself for this. I mean, I don't really hate myself, Chad, so we don't need to really get
Okay,
into that
sure.
deeper. But when somebody's like really loud in the plane and they're talking loud, or they have
Oh.
their iPad on, like full noise,
Yeah.
and I look around like, oh, it's funny. Oh, is that you? And then I'll kind of like do it again. Another minute, I'm like, look around like, oh, is that you? Again, like with the same look, like you're such an idiot.
That doesn't bother me as
Uh.
much as like the personality that's loud. Oh, you know, like acting
Yeah.
cool and stuff. And I'm like,
Oh,
and the 3 in me wants to like just beat
Outdo
it out of
them.
it. Yeah, it's like,
yeah. I could
I'm
be
going to make
louder.
you feel like a little human being. You know, that's what I really want to do.
Yeah.
But,
planes,
oh,
actually planes, having just spent a lot of time on planes the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's probably, there's several things
Wow.
going on a plane several scenarios that I would put under my pet peeve
be a
category.
good sitcom.
There's a lot going on there.
So
And I did
many
fly
new
first
ones
class on
unlocked.
one of my trips.
Bragging.
And,
Swish.
and so that was kind of an interesting, almost strange.
You feel better about yourself when you're on
yeah.
there?
Yeah.
But the lady sitting next to me and she was looking at some really important spreadsheet about oil and gas.
Yeah.
And the way she was chewing her gum, instead of like just taking out a piece and put it back in her purse.
Yeah.
She literally opened the little gum container.
Yep.
And she's looking at these spreadsheets and she just like popping them in like one after another. She'd chew for a second and then just pop another one in. So
was she swallowing them?
I don't know. But I was like, when we get to where we're going, is she just gonna be like
Willy Wonka?
Yeah, like just have like gum ball wad in her mouth.
Yeah.
I was looking like, again, I'm kind of doing the like.
You're just analyzing everybody.
Totally.
Like, what is this fixation?
No, I think you're doing great. I think you're doing really great.
So
we're accommodating. You're a total idiot, but you know what, man? This is going to be a long road for you.
Crazy.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Well.
And then we thought we didn't have any.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, right. Hidden talent.
I mean, I can drive like a off-road vehicle extremely fast in really dangerous situations.
Oh wow!
Oof.
I don't.
That's
how did you learn that?
Because I was on these. I did this trip last year.
Yeah.
And I did this trip just recently. I go out with this group from Houston, this company, and they go out and do these buggies in the mountains of Utah, the desert and the mountain.
Yeah.
And I did grow up around, like, my dad was big into like NASCAR and fast cars and drag strips and all that. And then he got me into go-karts and motorcycles. So most people in my life now don't realize, like, if you put me
your motorhead.
If you put me in one of those buggies,
whoa,
like, it's all out.
Yeah.
Pedal to the metal, 100%.
I'm really nervous and excited.
And so, like, I do this work with this company. They bring me out as like a guide and a counselor. And most of them, like, last year this happened, this year this happened. They realize, like, oh, that's not who I thought you were.
Right.
Because they get in the buggy with me.
Right.
It's like, I feel safe in your office.
Yeah.
I don't feel safe here.
They're grabbing a little bar on the buggy, and, you know, we're going 80 miles an hour, you know, around these off-camber turns, and they're just like...
different approach.
It's a
not
different
a dog.
approach.
It's more of like, we're just going for it.
Totally.
It's very provocative.
Gosh, I want to have therapy with you in one of those things. Dr. Leo Marvin. Food you can't live without.
Food I can't live without. Tex-Mex.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah, you're a Texas guy.
I could eat it every day. It doesn't bother me. Tacos, enchiladas,
Yeah.
queso, good salsa.
Yeah. I actually think God is from Mexico, the Mexico. Yeah, to be honest.
Yeah.
Something you're currently rethinking.
Something I'm currently rethinking. Man, that's a good question.
Something you're currently rethinking.
Probably, this is a little bit kind of, you know, my field, but probably like how there's a lot of new research on basically where emotions come from, like what emotions are and how what their purpose is and how they're generated. And so I can see I'm being persuaded by the new science about what those actually are and how much we're involved in constructing what it is that we're feeling, as opposed to like, I can't help it. I just feel that way. It's just
happening to you.
Right.
You make me feel that way. There's
sounds like
actually
a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So that's probably me, like reading this literature, just like, wow, that's different, and it's compelling.
Yeah.
So
that's John Edwards Svetzer, that name, right? That article. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of stuff.
Really read up on emotions.
Yeah. But I'll send you a few articles on that.
Johnny's great.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you asking me. It's a real honor to be here.
Good. Well, you're welcome.
Anytime.
It is a big honor to be with us.
I live around the corner, literally.
That's awesome.
So I'm happy to come anytime.
I love it. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, thank you.
So, what did you guys hear? What was like? Oof.
wealth of knowledge today.
Yes.
I feel like I was kind of thinking of all of my sessions with Chad as he was talking. I was like, oh, yep, we did that. Yep. And I think there's power, and he talked about this through journaling, but also like even just therapy in general, like getting the words out that are in your head somehow have power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of us, even it's like the first step is that whether you have someone to confide in verbally or writing it down or those things. And I remember just speaking my whole story out loud, I think with Chad was the first time I ever had. And it makes you go, whoa, I knew I'd been through some stuff, but I didn't have a clue that it was all of this. And when I say it out loud, it's kind of crazy. And then he was able to say, kind of like what he talked about, he was able to say, hey, you've let's take a step back.
Yeah.
You've been through some stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe, you've learned, what did he call it? I would call it like coping mechanisms, or survival tactics. Those things that we do to kind of survive as a kid that don't really, may not be in our best interest as adults.
Yeah.
I think it's just really helpful to be able to do that. And I thought that was, for me, one of the most beneficial things in therapy, and kind of where he started today. And I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Well, I mean, that's so much of the stuff is stuff that he's been saying to me.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, we've told you about him before and the things we've been learning from him.
I think
he's ugly.
Oh,
he's a jerk.
Okay.
He's looking good today, man.
He looks great today.
I was like, God, you're a good looking man,
He cleaned really well up. Yeah.
He said, podcast, say less.
Yeah.
I'm coming in prepared. No, I think it's so awesome to understand that therapy is so important and it helps a lot of families. But there are parts of therapy that anyone can do. And I think him saying, learning how to be in people's seasons without feeling the need to interject or change the steps that they're taking can be done by anyone. Of course, therapy gives you resources for you to help do that for yourself, and kind of see your world and your situation in a bigger picture. But the beauty and the heart of Porter's call, and maybe the invitation for us, is also to practice walking alongside people without needing to change something, even though you think it's for their best. It could be a parent, it could be a friend, where you just want them to be thriving, and we love that heart. But what they need is someone to just walk alongside them, hear their story, help them understand their story, maybe help them to slow down, be mindful. All those things are by listening more and being present more than controlling or directing a person or a situation. I thought that was so great. How many times are we like, things would change if you'd listen to me?
Yeah.
But then where's the acceptance of, what if things don't change? Then what does life look like if I'm present and I accept this is what it is for now?
Yep.
How do I show up for you and for myself too?
He helped me even just with the whole accommodating idea of how God's scriptures are actually somewhat a God accommodating to where man has gone, humanity has gone, and being this kind, gentle gentleman, going, okay, I know, good father. That's like, yeah, okay, we're here. This is not the ideal.
Right.
We're always aiming back to the ideal, but here we're going to take it from a different direction. But then also in the same scriptures and the same heart of God, is this also truth with certain things. That was really, I have things to think about with that. That was really great, because I'm really thinking through the written word of God right now.
Right.
And trying to rethink my thinking on it, and not, and people get so scared of the word deconstruction. We talked about that in this podcast
Which was
too.
so great, because I think everyone has a different view and opinion of what it is.
Yeah.
And he did such a good job of making it relatable, because maybe we're all somewhat always deconstructing something. And so he made it to where, but on a bigger, way, this is what it might look like according to faith. But it was so good.
Yeah. I'm a fan.
Yeah. So maybe if we're practicing something this week out of this conversation, it's being mindful, learning how to slow down to understand your own story. And it could be journaling, it could be talking to a friend, it could be going to therapy. There's beauty in you value something so much that you're going to make an hour a priority every week, you know?
Yeah.
But maybe it's practicing to learn your story by just being mindful. How can I be mindful? How can I slow down in this moment?
Yeah, slowing down, that one's huge with me. And I think even doing that, I've been trying to do that with Jesus. So as I'm slowing down, as I'm either getting worried about something or pissed with my kids or something, I'm really trying to slow down with Jesus intentionally and then saying, Jesus, help me have empathy for this person or for myself in this moment. That's really been a practice that I've been doing. So that might be a great practice for this week.
Love it.
So anywho, you guys, thank you for listening, watching, doing whatever you're doing. We are so truly grateful for you. And I don't know, just getting to do this with you. So
yes. So please comment. We want to know how it's going for you. All the things here, subscribe, share, all of that love and support. We really do appreciate.
Bye.